Heaven's Gate and its connection to the Giza intelligences, B'Photh, and its evil plot to destroy the Billy Meier mission, then turning its preposterous and fanatic sect against humankind. By J. Barreto. The Heaven's Gate cult committed suicide near San Diego in the community of Rancho Santa Fe in March 23, 1997. They did so in the hopes of being snatched away in a spaceship that was supposedly flying in the slipstream of the Hale-Bopp comet. This was the largest mass suicide on American soil. Dear friends and truth seekers, the excerpts below were taken by me, J. Barreto, from the book And Yet They Fly, ISBN 0-9711523-0-6, published by Steelmark LLC, First edition, paperback 2001, in English language by author Guido Moosbrugger. Excerpts refers to pages 274 and 275 of the book. Please read carefully to understand what I found while researching to discover who was the evil couple mentioned by Sem Jace. A real fulfilled prophecy to corroborate Billy's truthfulness and real clear proof that Plejarians are real. I do not know if someone else in the world ever figured it out before, probably yes, and realized that this dialogue, I am sure with 100% certainty, really refers to Heaven's Gate case. Anyway, this is my collaboration to knowledge to all of you friends and supporters of real truth, and truth shall be spread and must not be kept hidden from our eyes and knowledge, as is perfectly stated in the following Talmud of J. Manuel passages from chapter 35, Cults around J. Manuel, TJ 35:43. And such cults will be built upon human blood, hatred, greed, and power, on lies and deceptions, and on cheating, misunderstanding, self-deception, confusion of consciousness and delusion. TJ 35:44. But just as they will have arisen, so will they be destroyed, because the truth will triumph. TJ 35:45. For there is no untruth that will not be denounced as a lie. TJ 35:46. There is nothing hidden that will not become revealed. TJ 35:47. Humans will recognize what is before their faces, and what is hidden from them will reveal itself when they search for the truth and the enlightenment of wisdom. I typed the dialogue word by word to those of you who don't have the book And Yet They Fly yet. Please read the whole book for more detailed references on the Giza intelligences that you can order in English language at www.theyfly.com, Michael Horn's webpage, or at www.billymeier.com/products/index.html. And for more detailed information on the Billy Meier case, please visit www.figu.org or email to info@figu.org. Thank you. Note by J. Barreto: the original edition of the book was first published in German language, UNDSIE Fliegende. I think in January 1991, or 6 years before Heaven's Gate case in 1997. Sem Jace's message to Billy was given to him exactly in 1975 September 16, therefore 22 years before Heaven's Gate collective suicide in 1997. What made me link Heaven's Gate case to Sem Jace's warnings about the influence of the Giza intelligences was the name of a North American town called Waldport that called my attention. I am a Brazilian citizen and I never have been abroad, and I have plenty of detailed maps of U.S.A and other countries, so I can dream and travel by thought looking at maps, and I decided to check where in U.S.A this town was exactly located, because the book mentioned this town was in Oregon State, and I wanted to check where exactly in Oregon the meeting mentioned by Sem Jace was held by the couple back in 1975. Searching over the World Wide Web to this town's name, I came upon a link that coincidentally mentioned Heaven's Gate, and I wondered the whys of this connection to Waldport, but soon I figured it out while reading the web page on how a couple who used the nicknames of Bo and Peep, whose real names were Peep, Marshall Herf Applewhite, and one, Bo, Bonnie Lou Nettles or Bonnie T. I. Lou Trustdale, the original founders of Heaven's Gate sect, were related to occult, channeling, UFOs, etc., and how they held a meeting in Waldport, Oregon, on September 14, 1975. This Peep guy claimed to be a reincarnation of Jesus Christ, as always is the case with crazy gurus like he was. Checking and comparing the date of the meeting of the couple Bo and Peep with the date of Billy's contact number 35 on September 16, 1975 as given on page 273 of And Yet They Fly. I realized that the dates matched exactly to the time of contact number 35 when Sam Jace warned Billy about the criminal intentions of the Giza intelligences, and also where Sam Jace mentioned a couple that were under the evil influence of the Giza intelligences. Included in this document is whole text. See below the Lost Sheep of Bo and Peep, where you can read history of Heaven's Gate founders and locate the part where the city of Waldport is mentioned along with the date September 14, 1975, or 2 days before Sam Jace contact number 35 in September 16, 1975 with Billy about the same subject. I never was interested in reading anything on Heaven's Gate and did not like to read anything about it and the gruesome end of its followers, but after reading And Yet They Fly now I can really understand perfectly what happened to the fanatics and suicidal followers of Heaven's Gate and really realized why they committed collective suicide, certainly influenced by the crazy minds of Peep or Marshall Herf Applewhite, who was also himself influenced for many years by the malicious Giza intelligence's lies and evil thought impulses back in the 70s. I think now all of you will understand that this Giza intelligence's plot was pretty well detailed and precisely made / thought many years before in order to reach the evil objective to make, in the future, or our present time, humankind compare Billy's mission, messages, and teachings to deceiving and psychotic suicidal UFO gurus and their suicidal followers. What a malevolent and murderous mind had this Giza intelligence. And nowadays there are many who still believe Plejaren is a benefactor of their lives and will rescue or hook them up to heavens at the end of the world with his mothership co-piloted by nobody else than Christ, aka Maitreya/Sananda in person with a host of angels. Poor innocent and deceived people. After reading the texts where it shows us a very interesting dialogue between Sam Jace and Billy Meier, you will understand, that mentions the following: underscore 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 on underscore 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 underscore. Start of excerpts from And Yet They Fly by Guido Moosbrugger, page 273. They never gave up their goal of acquiring world power, and any means to that end was right and fair. From that time on, they spread false religious doctrines and selected certain Earth people as contactees who were the misled and misused as submissive servants. They did not flinch from abducting individuals and, if need be, from murdering them. A practical example of this is given in an excerpt from Contact Report number 35 on September 16, 1975, which Sam Jace relayed to Billy telepathically. Sam Jace, the Giza intelligences, craving world power, are preparing a very malevolent crime to harm various other intelligences disinclined toward them and who question their credibility. They have put forth great efforts in recent time to influence Earth people in a sectarian form in order to commit an extraordinary crime against human life, and by which the existence of extraterrestrials was also to be made preposterous and ridiculous. For quite some time, a human couple on Earth has been under the malicious influence of the Giza intelligences to introduce criminal and disgraceful things into the world. The purpose of these intrigues was to misguide great numbers of Earth people with the false teaching that the Earth would no longer be inhabitable in about 1 decade. According to this false claim, Earth people would perish in great numbers and everything would fall prey to death. They were told that not all Earth people had to die. A rescue action would subsequently be arranged by the extraterrestrials. Willing persons would then be picked up by extraterrestrials' intelligences and brought to another better and more beautiful world where they would have a free and better life. This was announced through posters and other forms of advertisement. In order to recruit those who were willing, a gathering that served this malicious was held last Sunday, September 14, 1975 in a place called Waldport in America. Note, capitals and underlining are mine and please observe dates J-bar. This is what happened. Those interested were told at the gathering that they could immediately be taken to a place where they would be prepared for their alleged flight into outer space in order to overcome the problems of space flight and to acquire the knowledge needed for their new life on the other, supposedly better, world, and adapt to their new lives there. The condition of this resettlement enterprise was only that all earthly goods would be sold or otherwise disposed of and that no children would be taken along. Unfortunately, more willing persons gathered for this malicious enterprise than had been foreseen. In a rush, many of them heeded the calls of the solicitors and followed them to await the supposed event in that camp. The consequences of this well thought out criminal enterprise are absolutely clear to us. Various futures were in store for these misguided people. The entire enterprise was to be camouflaged in the form of a new sectarian religion, through which all willing persons would be deceived and misled to prevent them from detecting the hidden motives. Weak and otherwise unsuitable persons were to gradually sorted out and murdered. Several of those found to be suitable would be forced into slavery to do compulsory labor as working robots on Earth for the benefits of the Giza intelligences, who were in need of various earthly items they did not wish to acquire through their own efforts. Others were to found a new sectarian organization and work in a religious form for the plans of the Giza intelligences on Earth. These 4 points were worked out by the Giza intelligences and were supposed to be used. The Earth people soliciting for this enterprise were unaware of the fact they were living in an implanted delusion. The Giza intelligences have discovered that Billy's group is working on this matter and will have to seek new ways of keeping their enterprise from being thwarted. Therefore, the danger that all the misguided people will be murdered does indeed exist. The life of an Earth person is of absolutely no value to those with a mania for world power. End of excerpts from And Yet They Fly by Guido Moosbrugger, page 273. Underscore 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 on underscore 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 on page 275 of And Yet They Fly. There are sample images of clippings with notes from 2 Swiss newspapers. One is called Tagesanzeiger Zurich, October 7, 1975, with the following header for the news on it: in a camp. They are waiting for flying saucers, and it explains about a meeting of about 300 people that attended the meeting in a motel in Oregon. The other clipping does not mention the name of the newspaper, dated October 6, AP, and where it was originally published, but the header says Messenger from outer space found believers, but explains on how citizens from Oregon sold their properties and every kind of possessions and moved after listening to a lecture by a life form allegedly from outer space, etc. Maybe those poor people in Waldport, Oregon back then sold their possessions to gather enough money to pay for the ride inside Giza intelligence's flying saucers. All of them were called to this meeting by this couple known today as Peep, Marshall Herf Applewhite and Bo, Bonnie Lou Nettles, crazy gurus and original creators of Heaven's Gate. Underscore 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 on underscore 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 note by J. Barreto. This whole text below was taken from this website http://www.watchman.org/na/hgatehis.htm, authored by a person named Bob Waldrep, maybe a Mormon but I am not sure, JB. Also, text has a church-like way of explaining things. You can read it and locate the part where the city of Waldport is mentioned along with the date September 14, 1975, or 2 days before Sem J's contact number 35 in September 16, 1975 with Billy about the same subject. The Lost Sheep of Bo and Peep, Reaching for Heaven by Bob Waldrep for 39 people in Rancho Santa Fe, California. The week of March 23, 1997 turned out to be more than just an opportunity to gaze into the sky and view the Hale-Bopp comet. For them, the comet signaled a time to rendezvous with their deceased leader. They believed she was returning to pick them up in her spaceship, which was supposedly hiding behind the comet. It turned out their retrieval was not to be accomplished by transporter beam as in one of their favorite TV shows, Star Trek. Instead, their departure was made via a carefully calculated group suicide, orchestrated by their leader. They viewed their suicide as a graduation, a departing from the human level and moving into the next level. They gave up all they had, all they were, all they could be, to try and gain the elusive and already oft-failed promises of their leaders. Though the circumstances that brought them to the cult vary and though their personal histories may differ, all of their stories end with Marshall Herff Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Nettles. 3. Applewhite, the son of a Presbyterian minister, was reared in Texas. Perhaps planning to follow in his father's footsteps, he began studying for the ministry. Mid-course, he shifted to music, eventually earning a degree at the University of Colorado. In the early 1960s he was employed as a choral director on the music faculty of the University of Alabama. Though said to be a pleasant fellow, even then he was described by contemporaries as somewhat different, or non-traditional. In 1964 he left the university and began a trek which eventually led to the tragedy of Heaven's Gate. Relocating to Houston he was employed by St. Thomas University to establish a fine arts program. Career-wise he seemed to be fulfilled, but his personal life was crumbling. Though previously married and the father of 2 children, Applewhite continued to be involved in homosexual affairs, struggling with his sexual identity. In 1970 further turmoil came when St. Thomas dismissed him following a scandal involving him and a student. Applewhite described this time as one of severe upheaval and personal confusion. 88 Update, document on Heaven's Gate website. This fits with reports that he began hearing voices during this time, and checked into a hospital, seeking to be cured of his homosexual desires. Possibly as a result of this struggle, Applewhite eventually had himself castrated, which he believed would be the ultimate freedom from his sexual guilt and desires. It also set the example for those who followed him, to do whatever was necessary to free themselves from the desires of this human level. In addition to this turmoil, he also claims to have had a near-death experience after a heart attack. But, according to Ray Hill, who knew Applewhite at the time, this may actually have been a drug overdose. Newsweek, The Next Level, April 7, 1997. Whether this actually occurred or was simply his own fantasy, it certainly prepared the stage for what was yet to come. In 1972 he met Bonnie Lou Nettles, a registered nurse who, as Applewhite described it, enjoyed a small astrology practice. 88 Update. Nettles was also a member of the Theosophical Society, see Theosophy sidebar, p6, and was involved in channeling messages from spirits. After meeting Applewhite, she also introduced these to him, drawing him into their practice, as well. The two very quickly became inseparable and were convinced they had known one another in previous lives, being somehow linked together. They came to the conclusion they were actually higher beings indwelling human bodies, very much like Jesus. They consciously recognized that they were sent from space to do a task that had something to do with the Bible, Ibid. Nettles soon left her husband and 4 children, departing with Applewhite in 1973 to discover their higher purpose. Robert Balch, Waiting for the Ships, In the Gods Have Landed, ed. James Lewis, p. 142. For the next 2 years they traveled extensively, supporting themselves by doing odd jobs, all the while continuing to define their message. Interestingly, they also sustained themselves by asking for help from preachers, which Applewhite describes as a humbling experience for both of them. 88 Update. Later they sent out their followers, requiring that they, too, sustain themselves by asking support from preachers and churches. During this time of travel together they came to the conclusion that they were the 2 witnesses spoken of in the book of Revelation. They also developed a rudimentary form of their theology that the kingdom of heaven was a physical evolutionary level. From these beginnings grew what eventually became known as Heaven's Gate. During this first period of travel they would also experience their first setback. They were arrested for using a stolen credit card, Nettles, and stealing a rental car, Applewhite. Eventually the charges against Nettles were dropped by the owner of the credit cards. She returned to Houston to work while waiting for Applewhite to serve out a 6-month jail sentence. While in jail Applewhite wrote what became known as Statement I, in which he framed their belief in its first written form. Among other things, it stated, "There are two individuals here now who have also come from that next kingdom, incarnate as humans, awakened, and will soon demonstrate the same proof of overcoming death. They are sent from that kingdom by the Father to bear the same truth that was Jesus." This is like a repeat performance. This restatement or demonstration will happen within months. The two who are the actors in this theater are in the meantime doing all they can to relate this truth as accurately as possible so that when their bodies recover from their dead state, resurrection, and they leave, UFOs, those left behind will have clearly understood the formula. 88 update, emphasis added. Upon Applewhite's release from jail, he and Nettles reunited. After acquiring necessary funds, they set out once again, calling themselves the Two. Applewhite's statement, "I was their initial recruiting tool." In March of 1975 it was mailed as a flyer to ministers, evangelists, and awareness centers far and wide. 88 update. After reading it, Clarence Klug, a metaphysical, New Age, teacher, invited them to speak before an awareness group in Los Angeles to explain statement I. After the meeting, the two invited those attending to come to Gold Beach, Oregon to hear more. For many came bringing others with them. Clarence and 23 others joined. The UFO cult was born. Some of these first recruits stayed with Applewhite all the way to the end, eventually joining him in suicide. At the Los Angeles meeting, Nettles and Applewhite had used the names Guinea and Pig, to reflect their understanding they were part of an experiment being conducted by the next level. Now that they had a flock, they took the names Bo and Peep. In his 88 update, Applewhite states they were never pleased with having to use the term UFO, because they felt like spacecraft and other flying devices of the next level were a lot closer to proper descriptions. He may not have liked using it, but that did not stop him. The poster used to advertise their first public meeting, August 1975, at Canada College proclaimed, "UFOs, why they are here." The use of UFOs became a major method of generating interest in his meetings. He continued to use it into the 90s and eventually used it to lure people to the Heaven's Gate website. After the success of their first meeting, they next held a meeting in Waldport, Oregon, on September 14, 1975. The press had now taken an interest in them and the reports were not favorable. As Applewhite put it, Bedlam had broken out by now. 88 update. They quickly moved on for meetings in Denver, Chicago, and Tulsa. Their appeal was to those who had dropped out of society, or were seeking their own direction, expressing their own freedom, and many who were going through devastating personal crises. This was a chaotic time for the group. Bo and Peep divided their followers into groups comprised of two-man teams and sent them out to share the message. Without the presence of their leaders, doubts set in and defections occurred regularly. Many members were also disillusioned because the promised demonstration, death and resurrection, had not occurred. Doubts were openly expressed and discussed. By the end of the year, the group had dwindled from an estimated high of 200 to approximately 100. The gods have landed, p. 153-59. During a 1994 recruiting meeting, representatives of Applewhite said many in 75 were following just to have something to do and still clung to such human-level ways as sleeping together, smoking pot, etc. When the two resurfaced, their group lacked cohesiveness and, for the most part, purpose. Bo and Peep reasserted their control by announcing at a meeting in Manhattan College on April 21, 1976, that the harvest is closed, there will be no more meetings. 88 update. Prior to this closing, more than 130 public meetings had been held throughout the US and in Canada. Typical of the exclusivity taught by the cults, Applewhite and Nettles had effectively barred all of the world's population except for these, some 100 people, from obtaining the next level. Those present must have certainly welcomed their inclusion, but realistically it also made them all the more dependent upon the group. Balch also reports that during the summer of 1976, Barrio and Peep took the group to a remote camp in Wyoming and further established their importance and authority by eliminating any possibility of individual revelation. Prior to this, members believed guidance came in the form of intuitive hunches and flashes of insight. The two solved this by explaining that all information from the next level was channeled through a chain of mind linking the next kingdom to individual members through Bo and Peep. The gods have landed, p. 154. If there were any question, it was now clear, Applewhite and Nettles were absolutely indispensable to their followers. At this camp they also provided an explanation for the failed prophecy demonstration. The failure was not due to themselves but to the followers not being ready for the next level. They said the members had become so absorbed with the demonstration they had not spent sufficient time working on their own growth. This is typical of cult leaders, who quite often excuse or explain away their failed prophecies as due to the members' sin or misunderstanding. No longer holding public meetings, the group entered a period of seclusion which did not end for about 16 years. During this time membership dwindled to around 30 to 40 members. The members who remained described it as a time of training, and themselves as guinea pigs in the training program. They lived intense traveling from place to place in a community environment. Their masters constantly experimented on them with diets, work, daily tasks, social patterns, clothing, etc. Supposedly, this was all to prepare them for next-level living. In reality, it simply brought the members under ever tighter control by their leaders. Applewhite and Nettles now took the names Do, and T, respectively, like the musical notes. Nettles apparently exercised extraordinary influence over Applewhite and the group. She died of liver cancer in 1985, but not before Applewhite came to the conclusion that she was actually his older member from the next level. After her death, the group's members continued to speak as if she was present with them, while at the same time waiting for her to return in a spacecraft and gather them. In the 88 update, Applewhite presents the following: "What has the class been doing for 12 years, you might ask? They have been tuning their minds with their older member's mind Do, who has been tuning his mind with his older member's mind Ti, and so forth up the ladder, emphasis, bracketed words, added." In the vernacular of Star Trek, this would be akin to Mr. Spock's Vulcan mind meld. Their thoughts were to become one. 5. The group resurfaced with a video series entitled, Beyond Human, The Last Call. This was broadcast over satellite TV, during an approximate 3.5-month period in late 1991 to early 1992. Applewhite claimed that from June, 1976, to 1992, they did not gain any new members, but did have a few former members return. Most of those who returned did so as a result of the video series. Applewhite explained what had brought the group out of seclusion. "We began to get clear signals that our classroom time per SE was nearly over, but that some involvement with the public was about to begin. So we started the painful and arduous task of trying to figure out how to re-interface, communicate, with a human civilization which by this time had become quite foreign to where our thinking had evolved." Overview of present mission. On May 27, 1993, they again came forward, publishing a 1/3 page ad in that day's edition of USA Today. The ad was entitled UFO Cult Resurfaces with Final Offer, and set forth the basic tenets of Ti's and Do's teachings. This was followed by buying ad space in alternative newspapers, weekly newspapers, and magazines around the country and overseas, where he placed an ad entitled, Last Chance to Advance Beyond Human. This apparently generated a new interest in the group and paved the way for their final public recruiting foray. In January of 1994 they sold all their personal items except for a few vehicles and clothing and set out across the country to again hold public meetings, for the first time since 1976. This took them to some 22 states and 63 cities, during which time they offered a very accelerated classroom for incarnating, for the third and last time in the civilization. In other words, that first crew is gathering the remainder of their crew, holding meetings as of January 94, before exiting, "He's back, where will you stand?" The last such meeting took place in Boston on August 19, 1994. With the conclusion of this meeting they again went into seclusion, claiming these meetings had nearly doubled the size of their class membership. Overview of present mission. If this is true, with only 38 members in 1997, their size must have dwindled to some 20, or fewer, people prior to 1994, or else they must have, once again, experienced large numbers of dropouts after the 1994 editions. Except for a couple of postings on the World Wide Web and newsgroups on the Internet in September and October of 1995, they were not heard from again until their 1997 mass suicide brought intense media coverage. What could have brought about these needless deaths? The answer to that question is found in the teachings of the man known as Du. If you want or ever expect to go to heaven, here is your window. That window opportunity requires, 1. An incarnate, as human, representative of the kingdom of heaven. 2. That all who hope to enter heaven become active students of that representative while the representative is present. 3. Those who endure the transition classroom until it ends, adequately bonding or grafting to that representative, will go with that representative, literally leave the human kingdom and earth as he is about to do. Staying behind, for any significant period, could jeopardize that graft. That window to heaven will not open again until another civilization is planted and has reached sufficient maturity, according to the judgment of the next level. If you quickly choose to take these steps towards separating from the world, and look to us for help, you will see our Father's kingdom. Du's intro. During the early 1970s, Applewhite and Nettles came to believe they had previously been what they called older members of an evolutionary/physical level above the human level. They taught that, in the early 1970s, two individuals, my task partner and myself, from the evolutionary level above human, the kingdom of heaven, incarnated into, moved into and took over, two human bodies that were in their 40s. I moved into a male body, and my partner, who is an older member in the level above human, took a female body. We called these bodies vehicles, for they simply served as physical vehicular tools for us to wear while on a task among humans. They had been tagged and set aside for our use since their birth. 95 Statement by an ET presently incarnate. Much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or in some other science fiction piece, they had to learn to exercise control over these foreign bodies they now inhabited. Improper behavior or false understandings, such as their numerous failed predictions to be picked up by a spaceship, could thus be explained as simply the result of not having fully connected to their own older members. They also taught this was not their first incarnation, mission, but they had been here many times before during the previous 6,000-year history of the civilization. T.I. and Du claimed their purpose and mission was exactly the same as Jesus, of which Applewhite wrote, "The sole task that was given to this member Jesus from the kingdom of heaven was to offer the way leading to membership into the kingdom of heaven to those who recognized him for who he was and chose to follow him." Du's intro. Jesus, they claimed, had been from the next level, and the one whom he referred to as Heavenly Father was actually his older member. 6 T.I. and Du, Nettles and Applewhite, placed themselves in the position of deity. They taught their followers that they, T.I. and Du, were the first older members to incarnate on the human level since Jesus did so 2,000 years ago. In fact, in later years Du would claim he was the one who had previously incarnated in Jesus, and T.I. was Heavenly Father. Of his older member T.I., Du wrote, "His relationship to this planet is as chief administrator, and he is the one referred to as the true God in the early stages of the civilization, undercover Jesus." Applewhite and Nettles taught that there was a chief of chiefs, the Most High God, who created a race of beings who in turn created this human level as a place to conduct experiments. These experiments were designed to see how those of the human level might best progress to the next level. The class therefore came to view themselves as guinea pigs in a grand, cosmic laboratory experiment. With this mindset, the cult members were subject to virtually any form of control the leaders might choose to impose. As one member put it during the 1994 tour, "Those above have the right to come among humans and do whatever they want no matter how terrible it seems." Watchman Fellowship staff notes on recruitment meeting, Birmingham, Alabama, 1994. She compared this to human and animal rights. Just as a human has the right to remove a puppy from its mother, so an older member has the right to remove humans from their families. She continued, "We are being brainwashed and would like nothing more than to be brainwashed, to have our minds cleansed." Ibid. This language is typical of those whose leaders are practicing extreme thought reform techniques upon them. By putting a positive spin on it, they don't have to prove it is not occurring. Later she stated they had gained crew consciousness rather than individual consciousness. More than simply community, the group virtually swallowed individuals. Thinking or making decisions apart from the group became increasingly difficult, almost impossible. These tendencies are still visible in some of the ex-members being interviewed by the media. Concerning Christ's ministry, T.I. and Do taught, only those individuals who had received a deposit containing a soul's beginning had the capacity to believe or recognize the kingdom of heaven's representative, Do's intro. Normal humans are simply plants on Earth's garden. Some, however, are tagged at birth for future use by beings in some stage of progression toward the next level above human. Only when these tagged bodies are old enough, having grown or matured enough, for self-determination or responsibility are they given a deposit containing souls. These souls then grow, with the goal of eventually totally replacing and discarding the normal human mind. At that point the being is ready for the next level above human, the kingdom of heaven. 95 statement. Their progress toward that kingdom might involve many incarnations among humans. During each lifetime they progress to a certain level and then, possibly, are taken aboard a spaceship to await implantation into a new physical vehicle on the human level, reincarnation, for further progress. They do not remember past missions but continue from the level of progression previously attained. Nettles and Applewhite used this to further tie the class to themselves by telling them they had previously been with them, in class, as Jesus' disciples. "We brought to Earth with us a crew of students whom we had worked with, nurtured, on Earth in previous missions. They were in various stages of metamorphic transition from membership in the human kingdom." Ibid. During recruiting periods, prospective members were told that if what they heard seemed to make sense to them, or appealed to them, then they were probably one of the crew. Likewise, if it was not appealing to them, they were simply not yet ready for this instruction. Of course, the implication of elite status for believers and lack or immaturity for unbelievers provided an incentive toward belief. Thus most of Applewhite's recruits either had a predisposition to such teaching, or a vested interest and will to believe. They could thus more readily be manipulated or brought in as guinea pigs of the grand experiment, regardless of their level of intelligence. As a further means of control, Do and Ti required followers to forsake all ties to the human level, possessions, people, including family, desires, plans, religion, rights, etc. As Applewhite wrote, literally leave the human kingdom and earth, including family, sensuality, selfish desires, your human mind, and even your human body if required of you. Do's intro. They then had to graft to their older member. Those who died in Rancho Santa Fe not only believed an older member was incarnate here on earth, they believed he was in the person of Do. He taught that only through him could one see the next level, kingdom of heaven. As true today as it was 2,000 years ago, no one, of this civilization, gets to my Father or enters the kingdom of heaven except through me. There is no other son of his, or representative from his kingdom, incarnate, undercover Jesus. In the end, the way to the Father also required willfully discarding their containers, human bodies, taking their own lives. The group's document, Our Position Against Suicide, expressed the expectation of boarding a spacecraft to depart this world. However, other end-of-life scenarios were anticipated as possible. It could happen that before that spacecraft comes, one or more of us could lose our physical vehicles, bodies, due to recall, accident, or at the hands of some irate 7 individual. They thought, another possibility is that we could find so much disfavor with the powers that control this world that there could be attempts to incarcerate us or to subject us to some sort of psychological or physical torture, such as occurred at both Ruby Ridge and Waco, Ibid. In media interviews, ex-members indicate the group would often discuss by what scenario the next level might want them taken out of this world. One theory was, it might be in the same manner as those who died at Ruby Ridge and Waco. Again, according to ex-members, to this end they had stockpiled a small cache of arms, not to use on others, but as a means by which authorities might be provoked to take them out. While they hoped for a spacecraft, they were ready for any possibility, including, apparently as early as August 1994, taking their own lives. Their August 18, 1994 poster, "The Shedding of Our Borrowed Human Bodies," stated, they may be required to discard their undercover costume, their borrowed human body, as they depart. If their Father does not require this disposition of them, he will take them up into his cloud of light, spacecraft, before such laying down of bodies need occur. A requirement of physical death seemed even more imminent in 1995, you may even be faced with the possibility of losing the body you are wearing in the demonstration of your faithfulness, 95 statement. One might expect their document, Our Position Against Suicide, to rule out taking one's own life. However, the document's last paragraph reveals that is not the case. The true meaning of suicide is to turn against the next level when it is being offered. By this definition, what the group did in Rancho Santa Fe would not be suicide. Rather, to not kill oneself, if required by the next level, would be suicide. In fact, some ex-members and family members of the deceased have issued statements agreeing with the victims who, in their final statements on video, claim what they are going to do is not taking their lives but simply their chosen method for leaving their human containers. Despite the smiling faces in these videotaped personal exit statements, the question remains: how much choice did the group's members really have? Was this a case of mind control? See, Paying the Toll, P7. However one views the issue of mind control, surely, putting aside their own definition, this was a case of mass suicide. All this seems in stark contrast to what Applewhite wrote in his concluding remarks of his 88 update. We believe in the reality of God, His kingdom, and of His Son Jesus Christ. If we are off track in any way, we want it rectified. If we are some well-meaning, misguided, charismatic cult that is full of baloney, we want that rectified. Yet by his isolationist practices and control of the members, Applewhite ensured that his followers would not, and could not, be open to honest dialogue and investigation of their group. Typical of those who practice mind control over their followers, do laid down the criteria by which acceptable investigation of his claims could be made. This is evident in his Undercover Jesus, evidence we speak the truth is, A. that our information and our actions match recorded accounts of the presence, conduct, mission, and departure of our previous visitations from the level above. B. any soul of this civilization who has known us in previous visitations or has had any genuine, physical or personal, relationship with anyone from the true kingdom of God, is present now, and is potentially capable of knowing or recognizing us and this information again. C. it appears that even the staging of some of the crashed spacecraft, which we suspect some of us arrived in, was in order to help the skeptics realize that they have visitors from another world. Of these three standards, A, B, and C, above, C is no criterion, but simply an assertion, and one which presupposes unestablished facts. Where are these crashed spacecraft of which he speaks? If these spaceships existed and were made public, that might validate the belief in visitors from another world. However, it would hardly be sufficient to justify or prove all of Applewhite's doctrines and teachings were true or from God, any more than it would prove true the teachings of the many other UFO groups. The B standard, particularly, reveals the mind-controlling aspect of Applewhite's evidence that he spoke the truth. Anyone who recognizes or believes Applewhite's message instantly gains the distinction of having had a previous connection to the true kingdom of God. Implicitly, any disbelief may be attributed, not to lack of credible evidence, but to the unbeliever's lack of preparedness. Believing means instant status. Once in, disbelieving means instant stigma. By that same stigma, applied to unbelieving outsiders, group members were protected from any influence that could effectively refute Applewhite's claims. Only persons who believed were qualified to know whether or not it was true. Setting such a standard clearly invalidates Applewhite's claim that he wanted to be corrected if wrong. 8. The A standard, above, does offer some room for objective investigation, and Applewhite fails the test. Much could be said contrasting the presence, conduct, mission, and departure of Applewhite and of Jesus Christ, of whom Applewhite claimed to be the latest incarnation. Perhaps the most obvious, and the most relevant, is the fact that when Jesus departed this world, 12 witnesses saw him ascend into heaven alive in his physical body. 2 angels promised that he would return in the same manner as these men saw him go. That is, his descent from heaven would be in a visible physical body, and witnessed by others. Applewhite would have the world believe that instead, the Son returned without a physical body of his own, invisibly and without witnesses, and then took over and inhabited a body already existing on the earth for 40 years. Tragically, for him and his followers, his and their departure bore no more resemblance to Jesus' departure than had Dew's arrival. The objective examiner can only conclude that this false gospel of Applewhite and Nettles stands in stark contrast to the gospel of grace purchased and offered by Jesus and proclaimed by the Church throughout the centuries. The real gospel and its ministers genuinely welcome investigation. Paul wrote to examine everything carefully, 1 Thessalonians 5:21. The Apostle John wrote, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." 1 John 4:1. If Applewhite's and Nettles' teaching were true, they would not have had any fear or need to build such controls into their system to stifle open and honest examination. Applewhite's words concerning their involvement in theosophy and their alleged temptations to assume leadership in Lucifer's camp are very telling. For us, the lesson gleaned from both these experiences is that it's not what you get into that matters, but what you get out of. Learning from your mistakes is what develops discernment, wisdom, depth, and maturity. 88 Update, emphasis added. Unfortunately for those 38 followers who died with him, they no longer have the opportunity to take this good advice and get out. They cannot learn and mature from this mistake. Let it be a lesson for those ex-members who remain, for those who may yet be attracted to their teachings by what has been left behind, and for those who follow after the hundreds and thousands of other false messiahs like Applewhite who yet remain. Perhaps if others can be rescued from such groups as a result of the tragedy that befell these, there can come some sense to this tragedy and some comfort to the families left behind who must continue to deal with this great loss. The Lost Sheep of Bo and Peep, Reaching for Heaven was taken from this website, http://www.watchman.org/na/hgatehis.htm by Jose Barreto zilva@uol.com, Brazilian citizen. Silva email excerpt from the book Message from the Pleiades. The contact notes of Edward Billy Meier translated by Colonel Wendell C. Stevens. 9th contact Friday, March 21, 1975 16:18 H. Sem Jace, 1:15 at our 5th contact, we ended the history of mankind where some 50,000 years ago in Earth chronology, our home world found peace and liberty. 1:16 shortly before this time, 70,000 human beings fled under the leadership of Plejaren. 1:17 in spacecraft which they took by force, they fled through the cosmos and settled here on Earth. 1:18 under Plejaren were 200 sub-leaders, scientists, competent in their special fields of knowledge. 1:19 by these, and others, Plejaren was unanimously acknowledged as King of Wisdom, IHWH/God, and regarded as such. 120 In the course of millenniums, they constructed great cities and inhabited all the continents of Earth. 121 Regrettably this went well for only a narrow 10,000 years, until desires for power and control prevailed once more, and a deadly war raged over all the Earth. 122 Without exception all was destroyed, and only a few thousand human beings survived, on Earth, while others fled once more into the cosmos and settled far-away worlds. 5. 123 For 7,000 years none returned to Earth, and the humans left behind degenerated and became completely wild. 124 Then descendants of those who had settled on faraway worlds returned. 125 They were again under the leadership of an IHWH, under whose command they built on Atlantis and Mu. 126 They built huge cities on each of the two separate continents. 127 For thousands of years they lived in friendship and peace, until a few scientists were again overcome by the old thirst for might and power, and tried to seize the government. 128 But having tired of wars, the nations rose up against them, and they occupied spaceships and fled into cosmic space, that being some 15,000 years ago in Earth chronology. 129 For 2 millenniums, they and their descendants lived in a neighboring solar system. 130 2 millenniums during which they had become very evil and only maintained order under strictest control. 131 By mutation and their sciences, they extended their lifespans to some thousands of years. 132 Overcome by their thirst for power, they left their world about 13,000 years ago and returned to Earth. 132 Their highest leader was the scientist Arus, who was also called the Barbarian. 133 Like the IHWH 40,000 years before, he also had 200 leaders and sub-leaders, who were competent in special fields of science. 134 In two groups, they settled in the high north and the present Florida of North America, while they continuously attacked Atlantis and Mu in wars. 135 In only a few millenniums after their occupation of Earth bases, they succeeded in destroying the civilizations of Atlantis and Mu completely. 136 The few survivors went into servitude, while many great scientists were able to flee, and return to their home worlds in the Pleiades. 137 But centuries before this point in time, the intruders boasted of their conquest of Earth, and IHWHARUS led a severe and bloody regime. 138 Still his sub-leaders assumed for themselves many things and became more and more independent. 139 Within only 3 decades they had gone far in their own decision-making, even though they feared the punishments of the IHWHARUS. 140 They advocated a codex, to under all circumstances maintain their own race and not allow it to fall to mutations away from themselves. 141 In a forbidden manner and secretly, they went out and caught wild earth creatures and mutations who were distant descendants of former human beings from cosmic space. 142 Wild and beautiful female beings were tamed and mated with by the subleaders who called themselves Sons of Heaven. 143 Each, according to his own race, created mutated beings, completely new forms of life, who were of dwarf-like stature, gigantic or animal-like. 144 Semjace, the highest leader of the sub-leaders, mated with an Eva, a female being, who was still mostly human-like and also rather beautiful, in feature and form. 145 The descendant of this act was of male sex and a human being of good form. 146 Semjace called him Adam, which was a word meaning earth human being. 147 A similar breeding produced a female, and in later years they were mated to each other. 148 Meanwhile, others similar had been produced, who formed groups and tribes. 149 From these, present earth mankind developed. 6. 150 IHWHARUS, angered by these activities, seized his subleaders, when he could catch them, and killed or exiled them. 151 In time he changed his mind and recognized a new power he could exercise over the earth beings. 152 with newly appointed sub-leaders and guard angels, he brought 3 human races under his control. 153 these were the ancestors of those who today are known as Indians, then the fair-skinned inhabitants who had settled around the Black Sea, and the third were the gypsies along the south of the Mediterranean Sea, who were called Hebrews. 154 through his guard angels, IHWHARUS subjected these races and forced them under his control. 155 as the highest ruler over them, he allowed himself to become venerated and adored. 156 he allowed them to venerate him above the creation itself, and his sub-leaders as assistant creators. 157 he imposed harsh and severe laws demanding the blood of the guilty. 158 his son Jehovah, who took over his dominion, was little better, for he too, as IHWH, demanded only blood and death from the 3 enslaved races. 159 the later descendants of these gods became more humane and developed a degree of spirituality. 160 their spiritual evolution changed their minds, and they decided to leave the developments of the earth beings to their natural course, and retired to their home world, so they left the earth and returned as peaceful creatures to the Pleiades, where their own mankind had reached advanced states. 161 united, we live together today and are an allied population in peace and liberty. 162 this is the essential that is important for Earth beings to know. The Pleiadians visiting Earth feel that they have vested interests here coming over from their own belligerent and often chaotic past, and, perceiving yet another atomic devastation by the scientists' new ascendancy, a legacy to us from their own history, seek to head it off if possible. 162 further necessary knowledge regards a cosmic change, of which I have already spoken once. 164 it treats of the age of Aquarius, also called the Golden Age. 165 in this respect I must first explain the religious interpretations concerning this epoch are wrong. 166 a certain irresponsible fanaticism treats this as the religiously proclaimed final days. 167 by no means is this new age a final time, because in truth it brings real life. 168 this epoch enables everything to develop to highest potential, including spirit, according to providence. 169 but it will take many centuries after entering that period to reach such advanced levels. 176 at first, as usual, the irreligious scientists will profit from the new advances while the common people will be restrained by their religions. 171 caused by the change of epoch, religious people will fall into fanatical religious delusion. 172 especially the 184 years of the time of change, religious beliefs of all sorts will shoot up like mushrooms and bring many humans under their control. 173 murder, suicide, and exploitation of all kind, as well as religious slavery to false beliefs will be the daily lot, by which the whole world will be shaken. 174 false prophets will offer salvation publicly in a fanatic search for victims and new followers. 7. 175 this is the initial phase of the Golden Age, the transition phase of 184 years. 176 the culmination of this period will come in 2028, our years. 177 the revolutionary force of this new epoch has begun in 1844, and since then the extensive alterations on Earth rush irresistibly forward. 178 the new age already demands its tribute, religious delusion, rapidly developing sciences, rampant crime, and wars of extirpation, characteristics of this time which cannot be ignored. 179 the first half of the transition period lasted 92 years, until 1936, while the Earth felt the last of the Age of Pisces, as it was called. 181 since that time, rapidly evolving events, discoveries, inventions, etc., were characteristic as for no other time. 182 this whole sun system with all its innumerable creatures is under the control of the new age. 183 each and everything is influenced by it, because this is a cosmic law. 184 it is to this law, to which are subject all movements of planets and all forms of life in the universe, that the Earth proceeds in the run of cosmic events since 1844, which according to evolution replaces all hitherto existing regulations not of the creational character. 186 / The origin of this epochal change is in the radiation effect of the huge central sun around which your system circles once in 25,860 years and passes through 12 epochs within the meaning of your astrologer's zodiacs. 187 / The Earth has already touched the outer borders of the golden radiation of the central sun, which are of the strongest and most revolutionary radiation. 8. 189 / But also much mischief is connected with this, quite especially in respect to religions and the use of new discoveries and achievements. 202 / The way showers of these changes are in cosmic destiny and appear under the creation laws. 203 / The way preparers for these revolutions, affecting humans, are also human beings who, as prophets and teachers, announce the truths of knowledge and spiritual wisdom. 205 / These way preparers will be considered revolutionaries, heretics, and exiles, for they will announce the truths for all to see. 212 / These revelations are of much interest, and also of great importance to humans, and you should spread the word by all means. This is our desire. 213 / I know you have undertaken the diffusion of my messages and other things already, yet, regrettably, they are not sufficient. 214 / It would be of benefit for you to form a group to occupy itself with these matters. 215 / During the last 2 weeks your labors have not been as successful as we had expected. 216 / This is not your fault, but ours, for we have allowed ourselves to be deluded about the loyalty of certain ones. 217 / Unfortunately they are more imprisoned within their religions than we had calculated. 218 / But we did not want to penetrate their secrets, thus this observation escaped us. 219 / Therefore it becomes necessary for you to find a new way. Meier, you tell me this so easily, but what shall I do then? I am a stranger in this field, in the public sphere, and have no connections. I really do not know how I could reach the public. 11.